Hello all and welcome to yet another edition of hrtech.sg's Tech Talks, where we talk to subject matter experts on all aspects in the realm of HR and HR technology. Today, we are extremely happy to host Dan, co-founder and CEO of FlexOS. In fact, FlexOS is a B2B SaaS HR tech platform that strives to enable companies to launch and manage hybrid teams and offices across Asia Pacific meaningfully and successfully. FlexOS, which is actually a Singapore-based HR tech firm, recently secured $1 million in seed funding, which followed an oversubscribed round led by early-stage VC firm Do Ventures. Welcome to the Tech Talks episode, Dan, and congrats on this oversubscribed round, especially at a time like these.
Hey, Sriram, thank you so much for having me. And yes, I can say the fundraising was quite interesting, where we kind of felt like it was one of those like trains about to leave the station and you're like jumping in last minute and the doors were closing right as you go in. So yeah, but anywho, we made it and we're very happy to now have the the ammunition to really seize the opportunity in the market.
Fantastic. So before we talk about the funding aspects, really wanted to understand from you, what are the key business challenges? What are the talent challenges that your clients are currently trying to address?
Sure, yeah, great question. So definitely you would know more than anyone else, right? Speaking to a lot of companies, that it's always been very hard for companies to attract great people, to engage their teams, to retain their talent, right? It's always been a struggle. But we've seen after COVID, these new working models, hybrid work, more remote work, that struggle has really increased. And so whenever we talk to the CHROs, whenever we talk to the CPOs, we keep hearing that same comment, which is that it's incredibly difficult nowadays to especially engage and retain teams. And I think that really stems from the fact that, when you're in an office 9 to 5, sitting side by side, working together, a lot of things happen by default, right? Like you kind of bond by default, you learn by default, you create bonds and, create that social network by default. But when you're only in the office maybe once or twice a week, if at all, a lot of that just disappears. And it's not that it's impossible to still bring that in to the workplace, but it just takes a lot more intentionality. It takes a lot more work, and it typically takes an amount of knowledge and expertise and also resources that most companies don't have. And so that's really where we come in.
We're really talking about moved in from great resignation to great reset to great reshuffle. I don't know what the next great R is going to be, but definitely what you're saying is the heart of the problem that HR teams are facing. Let's come to FlexOS, right? What is the unique selling proposition for FlexOS? How are you trying to address the problem that the HR teams and the business teams are facing?
Sure. So I'll do my mini sales pitch, but I'll start with the problems, right? So again, I think it's really great that the workplace is becoming more personalized. I think it's really great that there's now more choice for employees in terms of when and where to work. But it creates a couple of challenges, right? Both on the side of the employer and on the side of the employee. What you really see on the employer side is that, when you move towards this hybrid working model, it's a little bit harder to sort of like, again, gauge whether or not people are engaged. And that really starts by understanding, do people even come in, right? Because maybe if I'm as a manager coming in on Monday, Tuesday, and someone else comes in on Thursday, Friday, I may have the impression that that person is never even in the office, and that may make me feel a little bit bad about that person, right? And we may want to pull them in. So creating data, getting data around, when people are in the office, when and where they're working, what kind of workspaces they use is really the first problem that we help solve. The second one is really around the physical workspace. So a lot of companies, especially those who are lucky to have their lease kind of like ending right after COVID, have kind of thought about this idea of, hey, do I still really want one dedicated desk for every person I have in my team? And pay that, in Singapore CBD, pay that high rental fee if most people are never in the office anyway. And they're moving more towards these these offices that look a little bit more like co-working, which is my background, where you have hot desks and you have shared facilities, shared meeting rooms. So that obviously then creates a challenge in terms of, okay, it's great that 4 or 5 people can share a workstation, but how do you make sure that there is a workstation for everyone when they come into the office? So we also do that sort of air traffic control of making sure there's a good match between the people on one side and the workspace on the other side. And we do that very simple with a little application that lives within MS Teams, which is what most companies are using anyway, where you can see your entire office and you can just book the space that you need when you need it. And that's how we help manage it, which again also creates a lot of data and insights for HR teams. So that's all the sort of functional stuff. Now let's move on to the stuff that's actually interesting, which again really is on that point of engaging and retaining employees, right? So the main challenges, once we have sort of the practical issues out of the way of hybrid work, really are about how as an employee do I feel connected to my work, to my colleagues, to the company, to the culture? Do I have a sense of community? Do I have a sense of belonging now that I'm kind of coming in and out, right? And now that I'm maybe, my whole workplace experience is opening my laptop in the morning and logging into Teams or logging into Zoom, right? So how do we still achieve that? So that's really where the core of the offerings are. We really focus on individual employees. We onboard them into the platform. We get to know them. So there's like some quizzes, there's some surveys. We get to know individual employees, and then we can kind of like zoom out and tell a company, hey, within your 500 people, within your 1,000 people, there's all these little micro communities, and how could we engage them better? And then from that data, we basically create events, we create activities, we create really kind of like magnets for people to want to come back together. And so getting back together, that's basically our entire proposition to companies. When people are working from everywhere, when they're only coming in sporadically, how do we make sure that we all stick together, that there's that sense of cohesion? And then we activate it at a company level, but now also more and more, we see that it's really up to the manager to deliver this, right? It's really up to the manager to say, hey guys, it's been a while since we were all together. Why don't we do a team lunch? Or here it's often, why don't we go karaoke or, go to a barbecue place, right? So those kind of things are really now on the manager to orchestrate. But again, manager has a lot of things to do. Managers are very busy. They have their own work. They have to manage a team. They have to check performance. They have to do et cetera, right? So the manager, just like the HR team, needs an ally. They need someone that says, here's a couple of ideas and here's a milestone that's coming up. And hey, did you know that one of your team members, Sarah, her anniversary is coming up. She's been with the company for 2 years. Great reason to get together. Here's 5 ideas on how to do it, right? So on all those different levels, really where we come in is to make sure that people, get back together and that people stay connected in this hybrid world of work.
Fantastic. I mean, there are 2 things that really stood out. Number one, the nudges that you really were highlighting, which helps the managers, which actually is in the flow of work. That really is a great value addition. Number 2 is we have always been complaining that HR teams are not being data driven in their approach. So you're actually providing them the right ammunition in terms of data for them to take decisions in enabling better employee engagement. So these 2 things really stood out, Dan, in the...
I think, Sriram, there's this big question, right? Every single report we see that HR, the mega trend is data, and then the mega trend was big data, and then the mega trend was more data, right? But at the end of the day, as an HR operator, as even like all the way up to like a C-level HR person, do I have the time to go through like tons and tons of data? No, probably not, right? So we do all these data initiatives. It all ends up in a desk drawer somewhere. And why? Because it's not practical. What do I do with all this stuff? Okay, now I know that, this desk is used more than this desk. Like, so what? Like, what do I do with that? So that's why we always said that, like, even though, as you said earlier on, we are an HR tech or a work tech company, it still is about the human, right? So it really is about providing that partnership and saying, yeah, we're collecting a ton of data, but let's actually sit down together, like look through it and actually make some decisions based on that. And again, because we do it for so many different organizations, we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of insights we can share about and how to apply that data. Because again, I think data alone, as I've been working with data for a very long time, It's often something people talk about, but it's something that people very, very, very not so often do. And that's really where we're trying to be helpful as a team.
Not just about data, but it's about the insights. Perfect.
Mhm.
So the key thing that I wanted to ask you is, what are there any key trends that you are seeing in the marketplace that is going to actually help in faster adoption of FlexOS? Any one or two key trends?
Great question. And probably we can pull it a bit broader than FlexOS so that it's helpful for everyone.
Sure.
I think like one really big trend that we're seeing right now, and that's again really driven by COVID and really driven by these new models of working, is really this theme of personalization. So we were just talking about data and how most data is incredibly unuseful. In personalization, data is actually incredibly useful. And so I think that you're going to start to see this idea of, especially in larger organizations, I don't want to have the same workplace experience as the person next to me, because guess what? I'm a different person. I'm a unique human being. I did a talk earlier this week to about 200 CHROs globally for a big organization. And we really dove into this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And even if you just think about it from that perspective, right? Everyone in your organization, like, yeah, there are some things that overlap, but there's a lot of differences as well. And so I think this idea of personalization, this idea of tailoring the workplace experience to each individual unique human being is going to have a ton of benefits. And therefore, I think it's going to be a really big theme. And again, companies can embrace it so easily. Again, it may not be the biggest priority right now, but I think it will come up very soon. And the reason why I think it's unavoidable, because sometimes trends, they seem to be pulled out of thin air and we kind of hear them a lot, but we don't know why or what is the point of it. I think the idea of personalization is really unavoidable, because if you just look at how people's lives are changing, if you look at the new generations that are coming in, right? Gen Z coming in, being born with mobile, right? What does their day-to-day look like, right? They open up Grab and Grab already knows where you want to go based on previous bookings, right? You open it around lunchtime, it already suggests you not only the fact that you should be ordering lunch, but your 5 favorite restaurants, right? You open an app like TikTok, where I spend way too much time, and the whole newsfeed is completely tailored to your preferences, your interests, your needs. And so that generation steps into the workplace and it's like nothing has changed in the last 50 years. It's like, here is your desk, which is right next to that person's desk, and I expect you here Monday morning, 9 a.m., and you can go home Friday afternoon, 6 p.m. Doesn't make any sense. So I think personalization is really a really big trend that we're going to see a lot more in the next months and years.
Fantastic. Creator economies, that is what we are saying. In the West, a lot of companies have started encouraging their employees to create their own performance targets. So we are definitely moving to creator economy.
Absolutely.
So with this successful oversubscribed the seed round, Dan, what is the proposed market expansion?
Yeah, so right now, Sriram, we're really focused on Singapore, because it was one of the first markets in Asia to really go into this hybrid world of work. There were a lot of markets like Australia, Europe, US, where there was already a lot more flexibility, and companies already quite a while ago started working in these kind of like more, again, tailored, personalized, remote hybrid ways. For example, in the Netherlands, where I'm from, it would be very odd for an employer to ask you to come in 5 days a week already for many years. Actually, the 4-day work week is there now a pretty common thing. So I think Singapore is really the primary market for now. We are going to start expanding towards the end of the year. ASEAN first, that's really kind of like the goal with this seed round. And then definitely we want to launch into broader APAC. And again, our approach really is to focus on the human, on the individual employee, using these tools, these platforms to engage them, to make them connected, and to make them feel that every day at work is meaningful and valuable, and it adds something to their life. And it's not just exchanging my time for your money. As I keep hearing from people in Singapore in the HR industry, you know, it's become so transactional. Again, people like switching jobs is now as easy as logging out of one MS Teams account and into another one, right? So we want to make it really human. We want to make it really focused on that engagement side. We want to make people feel really connected to their company, and through that create a better sense of community and a better sense of company culture. So ASEAN first, then APAC. And then we can have another webinar maybe in a couple of years and see what's next.
Fantastic. What is the next in terms of your product roadmap?
Yeah, so on the product side, we have a couple of key features live right now. So that includes scheduling out your work week. So if I can choose to come in any 2 days, which days should I choose? So I can see who of my favorite colleagues are going to be in the office, which events and activities are happening, how am I progressing towards my hybrid guideline. So all of that is already there. We have the entire solution for office space booking in there. So that's already live. And then again, that engagement part. So again, what is happening in the office, who is initiating what, but also create my own reasons for people to get together. So all of that is live. The next features that we're really going to be focusing on is to go deeper on that engagement side to make it even easier for employees to create their own events and activities. So their own sort of like catalyst for people getting together, and to get a lot smarter in how we really help middle management and line managers in becoming more of like a community manager, becoming that person that in a timely way comes up with, or through us comes up with great reasons and great ways to get people back together. So that's sort of like nudge engine, as we call it, sending people the right messages at the right time about ways to get together is really a big part of what we're building right now.
And my final question to you is, right, so please tell me, how do you visualize the post-pandemic workplace to be like?
I can only hope that it's going to be, you know, incredibly employee centric, right? That's the starting point for all of this. I think, small side notes, in HR tech, a lot of the times we're trying to design for HR. We're trying to design for the person that we're selling to, but I really believe that's the wrong way. I really believe that we should start with the employee. We should look at, again, like, what apps are they using? What platforms do they love to use? And how can we create something that is their interface with the company, their interface with the physical workplace, their interface with employees, that really fits within that. And so I hope that, you know, that can contribute to that idea of I make my workplace, right? To your point, let the employee drive it, let them take the initiative. And of course, we know that if we leave it completely in people's hands, it doesn't always go perfectly well. So again, that's really where that sort of the platform can come in, where at scale we can give the right person the right nudge at the right time, and that will hopefully contribute to that. But I hope it's going to be an incredibly human and an incredibly employee-centric experience moving forward.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dan. There were a lot of takeaways, especially the fact that it's not just about data. How do you translate data into intelligent insights? Provide the relevant nudges, having the nudge engine in place, and the tremendous focus on employee-centric approach. I think these are clearly your unique selling propositions. I wish you the very best on your journey ahead, Dan. And thanks again for joining us on today's episode of Tech Talks.
Thanks very much for having me. And now that we have your seal of approval, I'm sure the sky is the limit. So I'm excited to go on the journey together.